Nora Vance had seen death before, but nothing had prepared her for the night Admiral Richard Cole's son was wheeled into Bay General's trauma bay with a bullet lodged inches from his heart. Lieutenant Commander James Cole had been ambushed during what should have been a routine training exercise gone wrong, and now he lay on the table in front of her, skin pale as bone, monitors screaming their warning. The attending physician, Dr. Marcus Whitfield, called it within 4 minutes. Time of death, 23:47, he said, already reaching for the sheet. But Nora's hand shot out before the fabric touched James's chest. Something was wrong. The rhythm on the monitor wasn't a flat line. It was too clean, too perfect, the kind of pattern she'd only seen once before, in a combat hospital outside Kandahar, when a medic had used a jamming device to fake a soldier's death during an extraction. Whitfield's eyes narrowed. Nurse Vance stepped back. This man is gone. But Nora had already ripped open her medical bag, the one she wasn't supposed to have brought into a civilian ER, the one filled with equipment no ordinary nurse would recognize. She pressed 2 fingers to James's carotid artery and felt it. Faint, but there. A pulse. He's not dead, she said, voice steady as steel. Someone wants him to look dead. The room went silent except for the hiss of oxygen and the distant wail of another siren pulling into the bay. Whitfield's face twisted with anger and disbelief. Get security. This woman is interfering with a deceased patient. 2 guards moved toward her, but Nora didn't flinch. She'd been trained by people who made hospital security look like mall cops. In one fluid motion, she pulled a portable defibrillator unit from a nearby cart, adjusted the settings to a frequency she'd used exactly once in her old life, and delivered a shock calibrated not to restart a heart, but to counter the exact electronic dampening signature she'd detected. James's monitor spiked, then spiked again. A collective gasp filled the room as the flat line shattered into a real, ragged, beautiful heartbeat. Whitfield stumbled backward, his clipboard falling to the floor. That's not possible. It's very possible, Nora said, already calling for a crash cart, for blood, for a surgeon who actually knew what internal sabotage looked like. Someone in this hospital wanted the Admiral's son dead, and they nearly got away with it. Word spread through the halls faster than the code blue alert. By the time Admiral Cole arrived 20 minutes later, sprinting through the doors in his dress uniform, hastily buttoned, eyes wild with a father's terror, his son was alive, stabilized, and surrounded by a trauma team that had no idea how close they'd come to burying a living man. The Admiral froze at the sight of Nora Vance standing over his son's bed, blood on her gloves, her badge reading nothing more than RN, Emergency Department. He didn't know her name yet. He didn't know what she'd done, or what she'd once been trained to do in places far darker than this hospital. But he would, because Nora Vance hadn't just saved his son's life. She'd uncovered a truth that someone inside Bay General had killed to protect, and now that she'd pulled the thread, the entire conspiracy was about to unravel, starting with the very doctor who'd pronounced James dead in the first place. If you're loving this story so far, hit that subscribe button right now, because what happens next will leave you speechless. Nora Vance's past is about to catch up with her in ways nobody saw coming. Dr. Marcus Whitfield stood in the hospital's administrative office the next morning, sweat beading at his temple as hospital board members demanded answers. How does a licensed physician misdiagnose a living man as dead? The official story was medical error, exhaustion, a tragic mistake during a chaotic mass casualty night. But Nora Vance knew better, and so did the small device she'd quietly slipped from beneath James Cole's hospital bed rail before security could confiscate it. A signal jammer, military grade, the kind not sold in any civilian catalog. She hadn't reported it yet. Not because she was hiding evidence, but because she needed to know who else was involved before she exposed the whole operation. That afternoon, Admiral Cole found her in the hospital cafeteria, still in yesterday's scrubs, dark circles under her eyes from a sleepless night monitoring James's vitals herself. He sat down across from her without asking permission, the way men used to command rooms did. "Nurse Vance," he said. "Nobody just happens to know how to reverse a signal-jammed cardiac monitor. Nobody just happens to carry combat-grade medical equipment into a civilian ER. Who are you?" Nora met his gaze, unflinching. "Someone who's seen this exact tactic before. Sir, your son wasn't the victim of medical error. He was targeted, and whoever did it had access to hospital equipment, staff schedules, and enough technical knowledge to fake a death convincingly enough that a real doctor signed off on it. The Admiral's jaw tightened. You're telling me someone inside this hospital tried to assassinate my son? I'm telling you someone succeeded. For 11 minutes, until I stopped it. Silence stretched between them, heavy with implication. Then Nora added quietly, I was a combat medic attached to a special operations unit for 6 years, sir. Before that, most people just saw me as an underestimated ER nurse who kept to herself. I don't advertise it because the last time people found out what I really was, it got complicated. Fast. Admiral Cole studied her for a long moment, something shifting behind his eyes. Recognition, respect, maybe even relief. Complicated how? The kind of complicated where the people trying to silence a threat go after the person who exposed it next. As if summoned by her own warning, Nora's phone buzzed with a message from hospital security. Someone had wiped James Cole's overnight monitoring logs. All of them. Every trace of the jamming signal gone. Someone inside Bay General was still working, still covering tracks, and now they knew Nora Vance had seen through their plan. The Admiral stood abruptly, his voice dropping to the commanding tone that had once moved battalions. Then we finish what you started. I don't care whose name is on this hospital's board. Whoever did this answers for it. 2 days later, hospital surveillance finally revealed the truth. Dr. Whitfield hadn't acted alone. He'd been paid to falsify James Cole's death by a defense contractor executive whose fraudulent military supply contracts James had been quietly investigating for the Navy before his training accident. James wasn't ambushed by chance. He was silenced, or nearly was, to protect a criminal conspiracy worth hundreds of millions of dollars. When the truth came out in a closed military hearing weeks later, Admiral Cole stood before Nora Vance in his full dress uniform, medals gleaming, and did something no one in that hospital ever expected. He saluted her. You didn't just save my son's life, Nurse Vance, he said, voice thick with emotion. You exposed a conspiracy that would have gotten away with murder. This country owes you a debt it can never fully repay. Nora simply nodded, the weight of 6 hidden years finally acknowledged in a single gesture. If the story moved you, make sure you're subscribed and hit that notification bell, because Nora Vance's next mission is even more dangerous than anyone at Bay General could imagine. You will not want to miss what comes next.